Hello, everyone. I am Kathryn Morgan Ryan. Moved to Ridgefield, built my own house here in the mid 1900s. Oh, I loved living in Ridgefield with my husband, Cornelius, for almost 30 years. Everyone who knew him called him Connie. Now, actually, I'm not very well known, but my husband certainly is. He was Cornelius Ryan, the wonderful Irish author historian. He was so smart, so personable, so dedicated to his craft of history writing. But I had an awful lot to do with his trilogy: The Longest Day, The Last Battle, and Bridge from Too Far. I worked on all of his writing, editing it, motivating him, doing interviews. I also did so much of the research. We worked together 24 beautiful years. Not too many people can be with a person 24 hours a day and still get along. Let me tell you my story from the beginning. As I said, my husband was an Irishman, an immigrant. I was from the Midwest. Small little farm town, Oskaloo, Iowa. Well, I love living here. My father was the town doctor. My mother was the town socialite. She was a full-time mom, and she had all of these fundraisers going on all the time. And I was the studious one in class. Loved to read. I loved to write. Always writing in my diary and my journal and submitting essays. Well, in high school, of course, I was the editor of the newspaper, and I was winning all sorts of essay contests, and it was a given. If you're in the Midwest, you go to the School of Journalism at the University of Missouri. And that's where I went, and every publication that was there, I was head of it or writing for it. Oh, I was not that good at communicating orally, but could I write? I got out of college and right to New York City. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I went to Condé Nast Publishers. Oh, I didn't get a job as a writer right away. I was assistant to somebody's secretary, but I moved up very quickly. They could see I was smart. I could write. I could get things in on time. I could come up with my own stories. This is what they were looking for. They put me on the board and writing for Architectural Digest. And I started taking all sorts of architecture courses. And then they moved me up to House and Garden and to Home and House. And I started taking courses in interior design and horticulture and so on. Oh, but my big move: Time Magazine. Finally, senior editor with all sorts of awards. I loved working for Time Magazine. I traveled to every country in the world. I interviewed the most amazing people. And that's where I met Connie, my beloved husband. Neither of us had been married before. It was a first marriage. We decided to move to Ridgefield, Connecticut, 135 Branchville Road. We built our own home. Oh, we built this big room, which was our office, and it had these amazing windows. And you looked out these windows and you saw fields. And our desks were 6 feet apart because we were always talking, discussing, working on projects. It was such a wonderful place to write, so peaceful, so calm, so beautiful. Our first book that we worked on was The Longest Day. Oh, this took the longest time: 10 years to write, 700 interviews. Of course, it sold 4 million copies. It was a masterpiece. The Longest Day was all about D-Day. D-Day and the beaches of Normandy and the Allies and the atrocities and all that went on with that war. The one that particularly appreciated this book, other than the reader, were the military men, the soldiers. They had been there. My husband made them feel that they were there, reliving the experiences, but also in a good way to share with the public. Well, the book after that was The Last Battle. Now, The Last Battle was very different. The Last Battle was about the skirmish in Berlin, the takeover of Berlin, when the Allies were able to take down the Third Reich, to take down the Nazis, and finally gain freedom for Europe. This was such a powerful book, and one that had not been talked about a great deal before this. Well, at the end of this book, my husband turned to me one day and said, "Kathryn, do you think you could ever write a book on your own?" I said, "Most certainly I could write a book on my own. I'm not going to write a 600-page documentary on war, but I could write a book on my own." Well, he didn't know it, but on my own, I did start writing. And my book was called The Betty Tree. Now, Betty Grable at the time was the most beautiful author, the most beautiful actress of her time. She was also the most sexual. Now, tree to me was the symbol of life, the seed, the roots, the sapling, the growing of the limbs, then the deterioration. So I called it the Betty Tree. And of course, it took place in the Midwest in a small farm town. The father was a doctor, the mother was a socialite. They had little time for their daughter because they were so busy. Now, their daughter, who was named Hartley Lansing, was the most beautiful sexual girl in town. Now, this was not autobiography. No, no, no. I was not this girl. I was the most studious, smartest girl in my town. But anyway, Hartley tired very soon of the local boys in town, and she decided to move on with her beauty. She moved on to the next town where there was a flight training school for naval officers, and she ran in to Lieutenant Miner. Oh, she was totally taken by Lieutenant Miner, who was 10 years older than she was. Well, she thought he was madly in love with her too, but no, no, no. He wanted revenge. Something had happened in their families years ago, and he wanted to get back at the family and bring her family to the knees. And this is exactly what happened in the story. Well, Connie read it. He said, "I read it in a night. It was very engaging and I enjoyed it. You certainly can write a novel on your own." And he said, "Maybe next, you're pretty funny. Maybe you should try humor." Again, I thought, humor, there's nothing harder to write about than humor. So what I did, I aligned myself with Alan King, a comedian at the time, and we wrote a book called Anyone Who Owns Their Own Home Deserves It. Now, my husband and I built our home, owned our own home, and you have problems, as you know. Oh, the maintenance of a home, the building of a home, it is endless. Like, I don't know if you remember the Money Pit or Mr. Blanding builds his dream house. Oh, that's what our comedy was like. And it did very well. Well, after that, and with my book, The Betty Tree, becoming the Peyton Place of the Midwest, we started writing a very powerful book, the third in the trilogy, and this was called The Bridge Too Far. Now, The Bridge Too Far was a story about paratroopers, and they were in the Netherlands, the Arnhem Bridge. It was a very strategical battle where the Allies lost so many men. And not much had been written about the paratroopers. So this was the third book, and this book took so much research. So Connie and I went to the Netherlands, and we were there for a couple of years doing hundreds of interviews and so much research. And Connie wasn't feeling well. And I said, we have to come home, talk to your doctor. We came home. The doctor said Connie was okay. He just needed to rest. He had been doing so many books back to back. He rested. We went back to the Netherlands, and he became seriously ill. We found out he had stage 4 cancer, prostate cancer. He needed intensive radiation, chemotherapy, seed implants, operation after operation. Oh, it was absolutely devastating. We were only halfway through the book. We came home. Connie was in the last half of the book. I had to sit beside him as he lay or sat up in bed. He would dictate to me. I kept saying, we can end the book. We don't have to have all the details. 595 pages later, he finished the book. I swear that he kept himself alive to finish this book. The week before he died, the book came out, #2 on the bestseller list. Connie was so upset. I'm only #2. Of course, it went to #1. And like with all of the other books, I had worked with him, and I was also the technical advisor on the movie that would come much later and win all sorts of awards. Oh, the death was so tragic. We had such a beautiful love affair. I decided I can't live in this house. I'll go to Vero Beach, our winter home, and then I will go to New York City, continue writing for Time magazine. I left our office the last to pack up. As I'm packing up the office, I find drawers and drawers full of information for a book he is writing, The Private Battle, his battle with cancer. Every day, extensive entries on how he felt, notes from all the doctors, phone calls, x-rays, bills. They even found Connie at one time had stolen the doctor's white jacket, gone in and stolen some of his records. The records that he had stolen, some of them were still in the drawer. He was working them into his book. 2 years, through tears, it took me to put this book together. There's a few things I want you to learn from this book because this is why he wrote it. Never, ever trust one doctor. You saw what happened to him. Get 2, 3, 4 doctors. Check them out. You don't have to like them. They have to be good. Check out the hospitals. Every hospital is not the same. #2, he said, don't sugarcoat anything. Have your doctor tell you exactly what is happening. Don't have your doctor tell one thing to you and something else to the family. Next, make certain that you choose your own destination. Have the doctors tell you what are the options, what are the pros and cons for every option, and you choose your own destiny. And last of all, think about your surroundings. Think about what is happening. Connie believed that he was on the press ship for so many battles for Time magazine with all these explosions, radiation, and so on all around him. That is how he felt that he got this terrible disease. The book did very well. He died in his 50s. Can you imagine? He had several other books in him if he had only lived. I also died young in my 60s. I was dumb. I was a smoker. I died of emphysema. People didn't know at the time that smoking was so deadly. We were both buried in the beautiful Ridgefield Cemetery on the border of Danbury. This is the tiniest little Revolutionary War cemetery. It is so quaint. Did we put up a big monument there for Connie because he was such a celebrated author? No. A little plaque on the ground you can barely see. Cornelius Ryan, journalist, is what it said. For his funeral, did he have all sorts of celebrities? Absolutely not. Walter Cronkite wanted to speak on his behalf. He spoke on his behalf, and it was mostly family and the closest of friends. Ridgefield had so many great memories for us. We were so active in the Episcopal Church. I joined the Garden Club. I joined the Women's Club. When we were in town, they would give us a convertible with a driver, and we would be in the Memorial Day parade. Yes, my husband wasn't a veteran, but he had done so much for the veterans, and in my own way, I did as well. I did win many awards for my writing, but what I was most proud of, the paratroopers in the United States Unit 82 and 101 made me an honorary member. I was also an honorary member for the 1st Battalion of Paratroopers in both Poland and Britain. If you have not read one of Connie's books, please do so. If you go by Branchville Road, look for 135 and realize what important books were written there. When you go by Ridgefield Cemetery, don't look for a big monument for my husband, but realize being humble is so important. It's your craft what is important. And my husband always told people, the best thing you can do for your family is to be a historical storyteller. So, whenever you sit down with your family, recall these family stories because you are being like Cornelius and Kathryn Ryan. Thank you.